Clean it. The command echoed through the ballroom. Jenifer's hands trembled as champagne dripped from her gray uniform. The crystal glass shattered at her feet. The woman in the gold-sequined gown, Soo-ah, stood inches away, her red lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oops, Soo-ah purred, loud enough for the Seoul elite to hear. The help is so clumsy these days. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jenifer's throat burned with humiliation as she dropped to her knees, reaching for the broken glass. This was her life, invisible, expendable. A black woman in a world of old money and older prejudice, cleaning up messes she didn't make. But then the music stopped. Get up. The voice behind her was cold, lethal. Jenifer's entire body went rigid. She knew that voice, the one that gave orders to men who made people disappear, the one that spoke to her in soft tones over morning coffee when no one else was awake. Beom-seok Kang stood in the center of the ballroom, his black suit pristine, his tattooed hands hanging loose at his sides, the ink that crawled up his neck, dragons and serpents that marked him as head of the most feared crime family in Korea, seemed to move in the chandelier light. I said, get up, Jenifer, her name. He'd said her name, not the maid, not the help. Her legs shook as she stood, glass crunching beneath her sensible shoes. Every eye in the room burned into her skin. Mr. Kang, I'm so sorry for the disruption, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll clean this and go. You won't. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and Jenifer's breath caught. She'd seen him in boardrooms, barking orders that moved millions. She'd seen him after midnight, blood on his knuckles, violence simmering beneath his icy control. But she'd never seen him look at her like this, like she was the only person in the room. Soo-ah's laughter cut through the tension. Beom-seok, darling, don't embarrass yourself over the staff. Send her back to the kitchen where she belongs. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge his ex-fiancée. His dark eyes locked on Jenifer's, and something shifted in the air, something dangerous and inevitable. Jenifer. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the 100 people watching. Do you trust me? She shouldn't. God, she shouldn't. He was a monster in a tailored suit, a man who commanded an empire built on fear, but in 6 months of serving him breakfast at dawn, of catching him watching her with an intensity that made her skin electric, she'd seen something else, something real beneath the ice. Her voice broke. I don't understand. You will. Then Beom-seok Kang, the Ice King of Seoul, the untouchable CEO of Kang Industries, the man who'd never bowed to anyone, dropped to one knee in front of his housekeeper. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, Soo-ah's scream of fury, but Jenifer couldn't hear any of it over the roar of blood in her ears as Beom-seok pulled a black velvet box from his jacket. You're not a maid anymore, he said, his tattooed fingers opening the box to reveal a diamond that could buy a small country. You're mine, and I'm done pretending you're not. This is insane, she breathed, her hands flying to her mouth. Your ex is right there. Your entire world is watching. Let them watch. His jaw tightened, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something crack in his armor. Desperation. Need. I'm tired of the games, Jenifer. Tired of the socialites who see me as a prize. Tired of being married to duty when the only real thing in my life brings me coffee at 5 in the morning and pretends not to notice when I come home covered in blood. Tears blurred her vision. They'll destroy you for this. I'm nobody. You're everything. His hand reached for hers, hovering, waiting for permission she shouldn't give. Say yes, and I'll burn this entire empire down before I let anyone touch you. Say no, and I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what I could have been if I'd been brave enough to choose you. Behind him, Soo-ah was screaming. Security was moving. The Mafia heads in attendance were rising from their seats, their faces twisted with rage at the insult. The Ice King choosing a foreign servant over tradition, over alliances, over everything their world demanded. Jenifer's hand trembled as it lowered from her mouth. One word would change everything. Would paint a target on her back. Would drag her into a war she didn't understand. But when she looked into Beom-seok's eyes that had watched her for months with a hunger he thought she didn't see, she realized she'd already made her choice, had made it the first time he'd smiled at her over that morning coffee, when the monster had shown her the man beneath. Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but it might as well have been a gunshot. Beom-seok surged to his feet, sliding the massive diamond onto her finger as chaos exploded around them. His hand gripped hers like he'd never let go. Then let the war begin, he murmured against her ear, and Jenifer realized she'd just become the most dangerous woman in Seoul, the one thing the Ice King would kill to protect. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're rewatching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. Jenifer heard the stem of the champagne flute snap before she felt it leave her fingers. Glass and golden liquid exploded across the polished marble, splashing her skirt, glittering under the white glare of the chandeliers. For a second, the music drowned it out, the string quartet sawing through a bright, meaningless waltz. Then the flute hit the floor in slow motion and shattered. The sound sliced through the room like a bullet. Conversation stopped mid-laugh. 100 faces turned as one toward the maid in the plain gray uniform standing in the middle of the ballroom. Frozen, her hand still curved in the shape of a glass that no longer existed. Clean it, the words fell like ice shavings. Soo-ah stood inches away, gleaming in gold from throat to hem. Her sequined gown clung to her like molten metal, every facet catching light. The jewels at her throat probably cost more than Jenifer's entire life. Her lips curled in amusement, a perfect cruel bow. Oops, she said, not bothering to lower her voice. The help is so clumsy these days. Laughter rippled through the hall. It didn't explode. It slithered. Soft, elegant, polished people pretending they weren't amused while their eyes burned with delight. Jenifer felt heat rush to her face, shame climbing her neck and settling like fire beneath her skin. I'm so sorry, ma'am, she whispered, already dropping to her knees. The uniform pulled at her shoulders as she knelt, the familiar pinch grounding her bottom visible. That was what she was supposed to be, a pair of hands carrying glasses and towels, not a body, not a woman. But tonight she could feel every inch of herself under their stares. Her dark skin, her tight bun, the cheap shoes that squeaked when she walked. She thought she was getting better at blending in among the ivory gowns and flawless faces. Soo-ah's laughter shattered that illusion as easily as the glass at her knees. Jenifer reached for the first sparkling shard. Her fingers shook. Careful, Soo-ah said in a sweet, mock-concerned tone. We wouldn't want you to bleed on the floor. It just got polished. A few of the watching men chuckled behind their hands. Jenifer kept her head bowed. Focus. Pick up the pieces. Don't cry. The quartet faltered, one violinist missing a note as he glanced toward them. The music sagged, then tried to recover. Jenifer's hand slipped. A jagged edge bit into her finger. Pain flared, sharp and hot. She hissed before she could stop herself. Oh, Soo-ah tilted her head, eyes widening in feigned surprise. Did you cut yourself? She leaned closer, voice dropping just enough that only Jenifer, and the closest ring of spectators, could hear. Maybe you should go back to whatever country you came from. Clearly we have different standards for competence here. Jenifer's vision blurred for a moment. She blinked hard. She couldn't afford to react. Deported was one word away. Soo-ah's family had that kind of power, and Jenifer had too much at stake back home to risk anything. Her mother's last text flashed in her mind. Just keep your head down, baby. The money's coming through. We're okay for now. This job was the money. This gilded prison with its marble halls and silent staff uniforms. Kang Industries paid better than anything she could have found in the States. Enough to chip away at the debt strangling her family. Enough to keep collectors from their door. So she bowed her head lower, letting her hairline cast a shadow over her eyes, and reached for another shard. Get up. The command slid across the marble like a blade. Every muscle in her body went rigid. That voice, deep, even, threaded with something dangerous enough to make armed men obey. The music stopped altogether. Bows hovered above strings. The last note hung in the air and then evaporated. Slowly Jenifer looked up. Beom-seok stood at the edge of the circle, a rupture of darkness in a room of glittering light. His suit was black and precise, the lines so sharp they seemed to cut the space around him. The ink crawling up his neck, snakes, dragons, something ancient and coiled, disappeared under his collar, only to reappear on the backs of his hands where his sleeves ended. Those hands hung loose at his sides, but there was nothing relaxed about him. His eyes were the color of midnight glass, fixed not on Soo-ah, not on the watching families, but on Jenifer. Mr. Kang, Soo-ah said, relief and possessive delight curling around his name. She stepped toward him, gown whispering. It's nothing. Your maid had a little accident. I was just, I told you to get up, Jenifer. His gaze didn't shift, his jaw tight. Heat crawled up her spine. He'd never used her first name in public. To everyone else she was Maid or you. That he knew it at all was a secret she held close like the memory of all those silent dawn coffees. I'm fine, sir, she said quickly. Her voice sounded small even to her own ears. I'll clean this and go. You won't. He took a step forward. The gathered crowd parted around him, the movement subtle but instinctive. Even dressed like a businessman, he radiated something more primal. People who didn't know who he really was called it charisma. The ones that did called it survival instinct. They moved because staying in his path was dangerous. Soo-ah's smile cooled. Beom-seok, really? You're making a fuss over? But he still didn't look at her. Who ordered you to kneel on my floor? He asked, voice deceptively calm. Jenifer swallowed. The cut on her finger pulsed. No one, sir. It was my fault. You don't kneel for anyone, he said softly, and something in his tone sent a shiver through her. Not in my house. Soo-ah laughed, a brittle sound. Your house? Darling, this is a hotel ballroom. And she's the maid. That's all. There was a beat of silence where the entire room seemed to watch him breathe. Then he turned his head, just enough to glance at Soo-ah. The look wasn't dramatic, it was almost lazy. But the temperature in the room dropped. You laid hands on my staff, he asked. The families around them shifted uneasily. Kang Beom-seok, the Ice King of Seoul, CEO on paper, myth in back rooms. People whispered that his smile was rarer than a truce, and his anger was the last thing you ever saw. Soo-ah's chin lifted. I barely touched her, and she dropped. He raised a hand, not to strike but to silence. Apologize, he said. Laughter died in a dozen throats. Someone coughed, startled. Soo-ah blinked. Excuse me? Apologize, he repeated. Each syllable was a stone. To Jenifer. Jenifer's heart tripped over itself. I will not, Soo-ah snapped, color rising to her cheeks. She's on her feet, he cut in, voice tightening. Or everyone here will be on their knees. The words were quiet. They didn't need to be loud. Power hummed behind them, invisible but palpable, like a storm building pressure. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Jenifer pushed herself up, glass cracking softly beneath her shoes. Her legs trembled as she straightened. Blood smeared her fingers. She curled them into her palm. Sir, please, she murmured. There's no need. There is. His eyes flicked to her hand, noted the blood darkened. You bled for someone's amusement in my presence. That is a problem. Beom-seok, Soo-ah said sharply. You're being ridiculous. My father. Your father has my respect, he said. You do not. Not tonight. His gaze swept the room, slow and deliberate. And neither does anyone who thinks they can mock what is mine and walk away smiling. Jenifer's breath caught. Mine. People shifted, exchanging quick, nervous glances. These were men and women who controlled empires, who were used to being the ones in charge. But the balance in the room had shifted, pulled inexorably into his orbit. He said. Silence slammed into the space where noise should have been. Beom-seok, stop this, Soo-ah hissed. You're humiliating yourself. Bow to her, he clarified, enunciating every word. Or bow to me. Choose quickly. The quartet stood frozen, instruments hanging forgotten. A waiter near the wall stared, sweating. The first man to move was old, one of the 5 family heads, his hair silver, his suit dark and conservative. He lowered his gaze first, shoulders bending with creaking slowness as he inclined himself toward Jenifer. The sight knocked the air from her lungs. One by one, others followed, some with tight jaws, some with faces carefully blank. They bowed, not deeply, not the way they would to Beom-seok, but enough to acknowledge. Soo-ah remained rigid, eyes blazing. I won't. Beom-seok's expression didn't change. Then get out, he said. Her lips parted. You can't be serious. I am always serious, he replied, in that same calm tone that made grown men reconsider their life choices. You will not speak to her again. You will not touch her again, and you will not attend another function I host until you learn the difference between power and cruelty. Beom-seok, her voice cracked, horror finally breaking through the anger. He turned back to Jenifer, the storm in his gaze softening by a fraction. You're bleeding, he said, as if the rest of the room had ceased to exist. Come with me. Her body obeyed before her brain caught up. She stepped toward him, every cell screaming that this was too much, too visible, too wrong. He offered his hand. When she hesitated, he simply shifted, moving his body between her and the worst of the stairs. Under the burn of 100 watching eyes, Jenifer slipped her cut fingers into his inked palm. The ballroom exhaled a collective, terrified breath as he led her out, leaving behind shattered glass and a woman in gold trembling with fury. He didn't speak until the elevator doors closed on the murmurs. Only then did he let go of the mask. Show me, he said quietly. Jenifer stared down at her hand. Blood had dried in a thin, dark line along her finger. It wasn't even a deep cut. Embarrassing at most. It's nothing, Mr. Kang, she murmured. The back of the elevator reflected them, her in her plain uniform, him in his sculpted black, tattoos visible where his cuffs had ridden up. They looked wrong together, dangerous. It's not nothing. His gaze remained on her face, sharp and searching. She made you bleed. She made you kneel. A humorless laugh slipped out of her. I kneel for a living. His jaw tightened. Not for them. The elevator glided upward, numbers blinking, a soft mechanical sound that felt absurdly normal. You didn't have to do that, she said. Any of it. It could cause trouble with beer. Do you regret it? He asked suddenly. Regret what? The fact that they bowed. Her throat worked. Images flashed behind her eyes, those polished, indifferent faces dipping, forced to acknowledge the existence of the maid they'd been laughing at seconds before. No, she said, honest before she could stop herself. I don't regret that. A shadow of a smile flickered across his lips, gone as quickly as it appeared. Good, he said softly. The doors slid open to the private penthouse level. Warm lamplight spilled into the elevator, softening the edges of his ink and steel. Come, he said. We'll clean that cut. Her heartbeat tripped again. Coffee at dawn, silent corridors, the world outside still dark. That was where she knew him best, not in ballrooms and public battles. She followed him out. Midnight wrapped around the penthouse like velvet by the time she first arrived there a month earlier. She'd stepped through the glass entrance doors with her suitcase in one hand and a worn folder of documents in the other, the city's neon heartbeat pulsing behind her. Gangnam had felt like a different planet. Slick, bright, every surface reflective. Her reflection kept startling her. Tired eyes, skin dulled by travel, hair scraped back into a bun that was already fraying. The lobby staff had been polite but remote, eyes flicking over her passport, her work visa, the contract that made her a live-in housekeeper for the most elite address in Seoul. They'd handed her a keycard, given her an orientation packet in crisp English and clumsy translations, and then passed her off to the head housekeeper. Mrs. Han walked like a drill sergeant hiding in a grandmother's body. Her bun was a perfect knot, her uniform spotless. She didn't waste words as she led Jenifer to the service elevator. You are quiet, she said, pressing the button. You listen more than you speak. This is good. Yes, ma'am, Jenifer replied, hugging her folder closer. You will clean the penthouse only when instructed. You will not enter the master's office without permission. You will not speak unless spoken to, and you will never, ever repeat anything you see or hear in this building. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Good. Mrs. Han's gaze softened just a fraction. Do your work well, and you will be safe here. That word again. Safe. It had sounded strange when she'd signed the contract, like a promise too big for ink and paper. Still, she'd clung to it all the way from America to Korea. The elevator let them out onto a hallway softened by muted lights and thick carpeting. Security cameras blinked in the corners. Every surface gleamed. This floor is his alone, Mrs. Han said. Staff enters only by schedule. You will receive a list. Whose? Jenifer asked, even though she knew. The contract had repeated his name like a mantra. Mr. Kang's, Mrs. Han replied, and then with a look that held something like warning and something like sympathy. You keep your head down, Miss Bells. That man changes people's lives. I'm just here to clean, Jenifer said lightly, even as anxiety prickled beneath her ribs. Mrs. Han's eyes said she didn't believe that, but she let it go. The penthouse was quiet when they entered. Too quiet. No TV, no music. Just the soft hum of the city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows and the low, constant whisper of the air system. It was beautiful, coldly so. Marble floors that reflected the recessed lighting, glass walls that opened onto balconies etched against the sky, sleek gray furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread rather than a home. Everything smelled faintly of expensive cologne and something metallic. This is the kitchen, Mrs. Han said, gesturing to a space that could have housed a small restaurant. You prepare coffee at 5 each morning. He takes it black, no sugar. You leave it on the counter. You do not wake him. Got it, Jenifer murmured, trying not to stare at the view. Seoul glittered below them like a circuit board. Mrs. Han showed her the guest room that would be hers. Small but clean, a bed in the corner, a narrow wardrobe, a window that faced another glass tower. This is more than I had back home, Jenifer said quietly. Mrs. Han's expression softened again. Then work hard and it will remain yours. She did. She scrubbed, she polished, she learned the rhythms of the penthouse, the way the air felt just before he arrived, the path his footsteps took from the private elevator to his bedroom, the sound of his shower turning on at impossible hours of the night. For the first week, she saw him only in passing, a shadow in a suit moving down a hallway, a blurred reflection in the glass when she wiped the windows, the echo of his voice through a closed door. He was always on the phone, always in motion, never relaxed. Until that night. It was just past 2 in the morning when the elevator dinged softly. Jenifer was in the kitchen, stacking dishes after a late-night meeting. Her shift was technically over, but the dishwasher had jammed and she couldn't leave it like that. Mrs. Han would have her head. She heard muffled voices, quick Korean, the heavy footfalls of more than one man. Bar then silence. She kept her head down, pretending she heard nothing. If she didn't see, she didn't know. That was how you stayed safe. A minute later, someone pushed the kitchen door open. Bar, she turned, startled, a dish still in her hand. Beom-seok leaned against the doorframe, breathing hard. Bar, the first thing she saw was the blood. It smeared the white of his dress shirt, blooming across his side like a dark, ruined flower. His tie hung loose, one end stained. His hair, usually slicked back with perfect precision, had fallen forward, shadowing his eyes. The tattoos on his neck were more visible than she'd ever seen them, snaking up toward his jaw. Ink coiled along his hand where it braced against the frame, knuckles scraped raw. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. But she hadn't been prepared for his face. She'd seen photos online when she Googled her new employer, youngest CEO in Gangnam, Kang Industries' enigmatic leader. But the articles hadn't captured the edge. Up close, he was beautiful in a way that made you want to look away, sharp, cold, too intense. "Sorry," she blurted, because it was the first word her tongue could find. "I was just finishing up." But his gaze dropped to the dish in her hand, then to the tiny smear of soap on her sleeve. Something flickered in his eyes, confusion, then dismissal. "You're the new housekeeper," he said, voice rougher than usual. "Yes, sir," she swallowed. "Jenifer, Miss Bells, Jenifer," he repeated, testing the syllables. The way he said it sounded like a verdict. "You're not scheduled now." "Bar, the dishwasher jammed," she said automatically. "I wanted to fix it before, but you're bleeding." The word snapped out of him sharp. It took her a second to realize he didn't mean her. His hand had shifted, dragging her gaze back to the spreading stain on his shirt. It was darker now, the fabric sticking to his skin. "You're hurt," she said, horror pushing through her nerves. "Sir, it's nothing," he said, and gave a tight, humorless smile that looked more like a grimace. A bead of sweat slid down his temple. "Just a misunderstanding." "I don't think misunderstandings usually leak," she said before she could stop herself. His brows lifted, just slightly. A flicker of something like amusement broke the tension in his jaw. "Midnight comedian," he murmured. "Noted." He swayed. The dish slipped from her fingers, clattering into the sink. "Sit down," she said. "Please, there's a first aid kit." "I have people," he began. "Your people are not here." Adrenaline shoved her fear aside. "You are, and you're going to pass out on your very expensive floor if you don't let someone help you." He stared at her for a second longer, like he couldn't quite believe she was talking to him like that. Then the fight went out of his shoulders. "Fine," he said quietly. "You have 5 minutes before security storms in and drags me elsewhere." "Bear, then sit," she insisted, pointing to a bar stool. "And try not to die on my watch, okay? I like this job." Bear, to her surprise, he obeyed, lowering himself carefully onto the stool. He hissed as he moved, one hand pressing against his side. Jenifer snatched the first aid kit from under the sink, hands shaking only slightly now. "Lift your shirt," she said, then flushed. So I can see." Bear, one corner of his mouth twitched. "Bold," he murmured, but he unbuttoned his ruined dress shirt, revealing a canvas of ink and muscle. The tattoos cascaded down his torso. Dragons wrapped in barbed chains, script in a language she couldn't read. A phoenix rising across his ribs. The images were beautiful and terrifying, art hiding violence. Her breath stuttered. "You stared," he said. "Sorry," she muttered. "They're just a lot." His smile this time was tired but real. "So I've been told." The wound itself was a jagged gash along his side, angry and red, not deep enough to kill him tonight, but bad enough to need stitches. She cleaned it as best she could, peroxide fizzing, his muscles tensing under her touch. He didn't make a sound. His eyes stayed on her face, dark and unreadable. "You should go to a hospital," she said. "I can't," he replied. "Because of business?" "Because I'd like to keep breathing," he said dryly. "Hospitals talk. My enemies listen." The matter-of-fact way he said it sent a chill down her spine. She'd known, in an abstract way, that he was dangerous, that his company wasn't just tech and real estate. She'd seen the extra security, the unmarked cars, the way some guests arrived surrounded by men who scanned every inch of the hallway before letting their bosses step inside. But watching him bleed under fluorescent kitchen lights, feeling the heat of his skin, made it real. "You chose this life?" she asked, not sure why she was pushing. "I was born into it," he said. "Choosing is relative." She taped the last of the bandage in place. Her fingers brushed the ink along his ribs and electricity shot up her arm. "Thank you, Jenifer," he said quietly. "You're welcome, Mr. Kang." He buttoned his shirt, wincing only once. But don't mention this to anyone, he added. Not the staff, not Mrs. Han, no one. Her first instinct was to protest. He needed proper medical care, someone who knew what they were doing. But the look in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't a threat, it was something raw, trust, edged with desperation. My job depends on keeping my mouth shut, she said. You're safe. For the first time since she'd met him, his shoulders eased. Get some sleep, Miss Bells, he said, sliding off the stool. You'll need it. This house doesn't stay quiet for long. He left the kitchen with smoother steps than he'd entered, his outline sharp against the hall light. The door whispered shut behind him. Jenifer stood alone amidst the gleam of steel and glass and the lingering scent of blood and cedar. Her heart pounded. She had come to Seoul to work off a debt, to disappear into clean linens and polished floors. Instead, she'd just wrapped her hands around the ribs of a man legends were whispered about and seen the vulnerability beneath his tattoos. 3 weeks later, the elevator dinged again, and Trouble walked in wearing gold. Jenifer recognized Soo-ah from the headlines before she heard her voice. Photos didn't do the woman justice. In person, she was lethal. She swept into the penthouse like she owned it, heels biting into the marble, perfume clouding the air with something sharp and citrusy. Her hair curled in flawless waves, her coat draped over one arm, her phone in the other. Jenifer stood near the windows, dusting, trying to blend into the scenery, invisible, always invisible. Where is he? Soo-ah demanded in Korean, switching to English without waiting for an answer. Does no one in this mausoleum answer when I call? For Mrs. Han appeared from somewhere, bowing. Mr. Kang is in a meeting, Miss Choi. He can make time, Soo-ah snapped. We are engaged after all. Or did he forget that small detail while playing CEO? You're engaged. The word hit Jenifer like a subtle blow to the stomach. She'd read rumors, of course, the articles that paired Kang Beom-seok with political princesses and business queens. Soo-ah's name had been mentioned more than once. Choi Soo-ah, jewel of the Choi family, polished and perfect. Seeing her here, in his space, made those rumors flesh. I'll inform him you're here, Mrs. Han said calmly. You do that. Soo-ah shrugged off her coat without glancing at the older woman, letting it fall into her outstretched hands as if Mrs. Han were a hanger and not a human being. Her gaze slid across the room and snagged on Jenifer. You, she said. Jenifer's hand tightened on the duster. Yes, ma'am? Coffee, Soo-ah said. Black. And don't take 40 years about it. She turned away before Jenifer could answer. In the kitchen, Jenifer's fingers moved on autopilot. Fill the machine, grind the beans, wait for the bitter smell to bloom. Her thoughts, though, refused to stay in line. Engaged. To him, it shouldn't matter. Her job was to make beds and scrub counters, not care who he kissed or planned to marry. The part of her that remembered his blood beneath her hands, and his breath hitching as the peroxide stung, needed to shut up. She carried the coffee into the living room on a silver tray. Soo-ah lounged on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. When Jenifer set the cup on the table, Soo-ah didn't look up. Finally, she muttered, picking up the cup. Do you people move underwater? Jenifer bit the inside of her cheek. Is there anything else you need, ma'am? No, Soo-ah said, then added as an afterthought. Actually, yes. Stand there and be quiet. You might as well be useful as scenery. Beer heat prickled beneath Jenifer's collar. She stared at a spot on the wall, letting her body sink into the numb, practiced stillness she'd mastered over the last month. The private elevator sounded. Beom-seok stepped out, tie loose, jacket slung over his shoulder. The moment he saw Soo-ah, something in his face shuddered. Soo-ah, he said, voice neutral. To what do I owe this surprise? She rose gracefully, crossing the space between them. Fiancés don't need an excuse to visit, she purred, kissing his cheek. Her lipstick left a faint mark against his skin. You've been avoiding me. I've been working, he replied. You knew what you were agreeing to when our parents arranged this. The word arranged hung in the air like smoke. Our parents might have arranged it, Soo-ah said, linking her arm through his. But you and I are not children. We can make our own choices. Jenifer tried not to listen, tried not to notice the way Soo-ah leaned into him, the way he held himself slightly apart. I have a meeting in 20 minutes, he said. Say what you came to say. Soo-ah's smile thinned. You're becoming rude, Beom-seok. Seoul is talking. Seoul always talks. This time it's about you not setting a date, she pressed. About you being seen with other interests. His gaze flicked, just once, in Jenifer's direction. It was so quick she would have missed it if she hadn't been watching him like a starving person watch the sky for rain. Soo-ah noticed. Her eyes cut to Jenifer, slow and surgical. Is this your new toy? She asked, sweetness gone from her tone. Did you bring in foreign staff for the novelty? Watch your words, he said quietly. Jenifer's heart stuttered. Soo-ah laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Oh, please, she's the help. She cleans your floors and makes your coffee. Don't tell me you're offended on her behalf. I'm offended, he said, that you think my staff is beneath basic respect. Something dangerous glinted in her eyes. You're changing, she said. I don't like it. Then don't look, he replied. Her fingers tightened on his arm. My father expects us at dinner this weekend, she said, regaining her composure by force. They want to finalize the engagement announcement. The invitations are already drafted. I have not agreed to announce anything, he said. You don't need to agree, she snapped. You owe us. We kept your family afloat when others wanted you gone. You think your enemies disappeared on their own? You think your little empire stands without our backing? A muscle jumped in his jaw. Your family has been a valuable ally. We have been essential, she corrected. This marriage is not optional, Beom-seok. It is strategy. Love has nothing to do with it. Jenifer's chest squeezed. I'll consider dinner, he said finally, voice flat. You'll attend. She leaned closer, her words a hiss meant only for him, but the room was too quiet. And you'll stop embarrassing me with your charity projects. That Maid, for example. Jenifer suddenly found the pattern in the rug fascinating. What about her? He asked, tone deceptively mild. She's distracting you, Soo-ah said. You don't think I see the way you look at her when you think no one is paying attention. How you hesitate when she walks into a room. He didn't answer. Soo-ah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Get rid of her, she said softly. Before people start asking questions you won't like answering. Silence stretched. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice. I do not dismiss loyal staff because you feel threatened by their existence. Threatened, she exploded. By a maid? By anyone, he said. Who reminds me I have choices. Her expression darkened. You're delusional if you think you have a choice here. You'd be surprised, he murmured. Mrs. Han chose that moment to reappear, announcing another guest. The tension broke like overstretched glass. Soo-ah grabbed her bag. We're not finished, she said. We never are, he replied, already turning away. As the elevator swallowed her, her gaze cut toward Jenifer one last time. It was a promise, not a glance. After she left, the air tasted like steel. Days later, the promise was kept in a car park lit by flickering neon and the harsh red glow of brake lights. Jenifer sat in the back of the black sedan, clutching the edge of her seat. Rain blurred the windshield, turning the city into streaks of color. The driver had been silent the entire ride, his eyes fixed on the road, jaw clenched. We're here, he said, pulling into an underground garage. I thought we were going back to the penthouse, Jenifer said, confusion threading through her nerves. Change of plans, he replied. Stay in the car until I tell you otherwise. He stepped out, leaving her alone with the sound of rain and the distant echo of raised voices somewhere in the concrete maze. She shouldn't be here. Mrs. Han had asked her to accompany a delivery, some documents, some clothing, something innocuous. Then the call had come through the car's speaker, sharp Korean, a name she recognized now like the echo of a gunshot, Bar Choi. A door slammed somewhere, shouting ricocheted off the cement, male voices clipped and vicious. Her hand hovered over the door handle. Stay, she told herself. Another shout, a dull thud, the unmistakable sound of flesh meeting metal. The decision made itself. She slipped out of the car, the rain cool against her face, even in the garage's partial cover. The sound led her around a concrete pillar, past stacks of crates, to a space lit by a single overhead lamp. Beom-seok stood in the center, shirt sleeves rolled up, tattoos stark against his skin. Blood streaked his knuckles. 3 men in dark suits circled him, one holding his side, another spitting blood onto the floor, the third backing away with hands raised. This is a misunderstanding, the third man said in accented Korean. Mr. Choi didn't mean. You sent men after one of my trucks, Beom-seok said, voice very calm. You intercepted my shipments. You roughed up my drivers. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a declaration. Jenifer pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. She shouldn't be here. She really shouldn't be here. We were instructed to remind you of your obligations, the man said. To Miss Choi, to the Alliance. You don't remind me of anything, he replied. You bleed and you crawl and you go home with a message, if you live long enough to deliver it. One of the men lunged. Jenifer gasped. It was over in seconds. Movement too fast for her untrained eye to catch, ink and muscle and precision. Beom-seok pivoted, grabbed, slammed. The man hit the cement with a sound that made her stomach lurch. Beom-seok staggered, just slightly, catching himself on a pillar. His breathing sped up. Blood seeped through his shirt along his shoulder now, joining a fresh stain at his ribcage. "Run," he told the remaining men. "Tell Choi that if he uses my fiancée as leverage again, I won't be so generous." They ran. Jenifer stood frozen, hands clamped over her mouth. He wiped his knuckles on his ruined shirt, breathing hard. The overhead lamp cast shadows across his face, carving hollows under his eyes. For a moment, he looked older than she'd ever seen him, tired and alone. Then his gaze shifted, found her. Fear shot through her. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to. I know you said." "You followed," he said, voice low. "After I told you to stay in the car." I heard shouting," she said. "I thought someone might be hurt." He stared at her, rain freckling his hair where it blew in. A laugh escaped him, short, disbelieving. "Someone is hurt," he said. "Me." The blood on his shoulder brightened as it spread. She took a step forward before she could stop herself. "You need that looked at," she said. "Again." "Were you volunteering?" he asked, eyebrows lifting. "Do you see anyone else here with a first aid kit?" she retorted. I don't have one, but I can improvise." His eyes softened. Most people run the other way when they see this side of my job." I'm not most people," she said, surprising herself. Her voice shook but held. No," he agreed quietly. "You're not." He let her lead him back to the car. The driver's eyes widened when he saw the fresh injuries but said nothing, only pressing a rag into Jenifer's hands from the glove compartment. On the ride back, she pressed the cloth to his shoulder, her fingers brushing the phoenix ink there. It felt like touching fire. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "Any of it. There must be another way." There isn't," he said. "Not for me." For us," she said before she could choke the word back. The car went very still. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible over the rain. Us," he repeated. "That's dangerous language, Jenifer." "You dragged me to a mob confrontation," she said. "I think we passed dangerous a while back." He turned his head, studying her. The city lights painted his face in fleeting color, red, blue, white. "They went after you," he said. "That truck they tried to intercept, it carried more than merchandise. It carried your records, documents, proof that would clear your family faster, make your debt disappear." Her breath caught. "I've been paying down what I can," he said. Quietly. "Your employers before me, they didn't treat you fairly." "Someone used that." Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you walked into my kitchen at 2 a.m. and told me not to die on your watch," he said. "Because you make my coffee like it matters, and you look at me like I'm a person, not a monster or a prize. Because somewhere along the way, the girl polishing my floors became the only thing in this life that feels real." The rag in her hands grew heavy. "You can't say things like that," she whispered. "It's already too late, Jenifer," he replied. "For both of us." Later, she would think that was the moment everything truly shifted. Not the shattered glass, not the bowing crowd, but this, blood and ink and a confession in the back of a moving car. Which was why, when Soo-ah cornered her alone in the penthouse study 2 nights after the gala, Jenifer's stomach dropped before a word was spoken. The study smelled like leather and paper and rain. Shelves lined the walls, books more for show than use. The safe crouched behind a panel Jenifer had been told never to touch. She was dusting when the door clicked shut behind her. "You're thorough," Soo-ah said, voice smooth as silk. Jenifer turned, heart already pounding. Soo-ah leaned against the door, a slim folder in her hand. "Ma'am," Jenifer said. "I didn't realize anyone." Relax," Soo-ah interrupted. "If I wanted you fired, you'd be gone already. This is a conversation. Our conversations with people like her didn't end well." How can I help you?" Jenifer asked carefully. "You can start," Soo-ah said, stepping forward, "by explaining why a maid has a file thick enough to interest my father's investigators." She held up the folder. Jenifer recognized it instantly. Her file. The one she kept locked in the bottom of her wardrobe, a collection of documents she couldn't afford to lose. Loan contracts, hospital bills, her mother's eviction notice, immigration forms. Where did you get that?" Jenifer whispered, throat closing. "You should be more careful where you hide things," Soo-ah said lightly. "I have people who are very good at opening locks." This is private," Jenifer said, heat rising in her cheeks. "You had no right." I have every right," Soo-ah snapped, the mask cracking. "You walked into my life and decided you were worthy of things that were never meant for you." Jenifer stiffened. "I didn't decide anything, I just work here." Is that what you call it?" Soo-ah's smile turned vicious. "Work? Is that what you were doing when you let him hold your hand in front of everyone? When you let him slide his ring onto your finger?" Jenifer's blood turned to ice. "I didn't ask him to do that." But you didn't say no," Soo-ah said. And now here we are. She flipped the folder open, skimming the contents. You're in debt, she said matter-of-factly. Deep debt. Your father's medical bills, your mother's missed payments, predatory interest, very American, very tragic. Jenifer swallowed hard. It would be a shame, Soo-ah continued, if those collectors found out you left the country under less than ideal circumstances. If someone suggested to immigration authorities that your paperwork was not as clean as it should be. Panic clawed at Jenifer's throat. My visa is legal, she said. I did everything right. Legal things can become illegal very quickly when the right people make the right phone calls, Soo-ah said. Your family would lose the house. Your mother's treatments could stop. She shrugged. Hospitals are so expensive, aren't they? Why are you doing this? Jenifer whispered, voice cracking. You have everything. Money, power, him. I had him, Soo-ah corrected, until you happened. Tears burned at the back of Jenifer's eyes. She blinked them away. What do you want from me? Leave, Soo-ah said simply. Resign, disappear, go back to whatever small, broken life you crawled out of. If you do it quickly and quietly, I can make sure things stay manageable for your family. And if I don't? Jenifer asked, even though she already knew. Soo-ah's smile was sweet and poisonous. Then I make one phone call to immigration, she said. Another to a few men who enjoy collecting debts. And you will watch your world crumble from half a world away. You're bluffing, Jenifer said, though her voice shook. Am I? Soo-ah's eyes glittered. You're not the only one who can dig into someone's past, Miss Bells. Did you think I wouldn't find out who orchestrated your father's ruin? The floor seemed to tilt under Jenifer's feet. What do you mean? American banks are so easy to manipulate, Soo-ah mused. Alone here. A change in terms there. A little nudge at just the right moment, and suddenly a man is drowning in debt, desperate, willing to send his daughter across the ocean to scrub floors for strangers. Jenifer's pulse roared in her ears. She took a step back, hitting the edge of the desk. You did that, she breathed. To my family. You were always meant to be here, Soo-ah said, where I could see you, control you, make sure you never forgot the difference between us. Your rage burned through the fear, hot and dizzying. You destroyed my father's life, Jenifer said, voice barely more than a whisper. To get a maid? To get leverage, Soo-ah corrected, over a man who thinks he can rewrite the rules. I knew he had a weakness for strays, for broken things. All I had to do was place you in his path. Jenifer's stomach lurched. He didn't hire me by chance, she said slowly. Did he? Something flickered in Soo-ah's eyes. He thinks he did, she said. That's the best part. He thinks he's the one who saves people. He doesn't realize how often I've been the one tightening the chains. Jenifer dug her nails into the edge of the desk to keep from shaking. If you tell him any of this, Soo-ah said, stepping closer, I will deny it. And then I will destroy you. He might choose you now in the heat of his rebellion, but he won't sacrifice everything for a liar. I'm not lying, Jenifer said, incredulous. Who do you think they will believe? Soo-ah asked softly. The daughter of a ruined American nobody? Or the woman whose family holds half this city in its grip? Silence echoed in the study. So, Soo-ah finished, snapping the folder shut, you will leave quietly. You will break his heart and let him assume it is your greed or your fear, and you will live. That is my offer. Tears finally spilled over, hot tracks down Jenifer's cheeks. I can't go back, she whispered. Not like this. You can and you will, Soo-ah said. Or your family pays the price. She pressed the folder into Jenifer's shaking hands. Think it over, she said, turning toward the door. But don't think too long. Time is money, and in your case, time is blood. The door clicked softly behind her. Jenifer sank into the leather chair, the file heavy on her lap, her world collapsing in on itself. In the reflection of the glass window, the city glittered on, indifferent to the war being waged in one man's penthouse over one woman's soul. The study felt smaller after Soo-ah left, the walls closing in until Jenifer could barely breathe. Her hands shook as she opened the folder again, pages whispering like accusations. Her father's signature stared back at her from a dozen angles, trapped under numbers that climbed like a nightmare. Hospital bills, eviction notices, final warnings, all the things she'd crossed an ocean to escape, neatly arranged in the hands of the woman who hated her. You were always meant to be here. The words echoed in her head. She didn't remember leaving the study. One second she was drowning in paper, the next she was in the service hallway, its fluorescent lights harsh and unforgiving. Her feet moved on instinct, down the back stairs, past the staff lockers, into the narrow corridor that led to her tiny room. She shut the door and pressed her back against it, folding slowly to the floor. She wanted to call home, to hear her mother's voice and pretend, just for a moment, that she was still the girl who went to community college, and believed hard work could fix anything. Instead, she stared at the phone in her hand, thumb hovering over the call button, and saw only possibilities. Men at the door, letters stamped "Final," her mother's voice shaking as she said, "They said it's because of you. If she left, she might be able to keep all of that from happening. BR, if she stayed, she risked everything." A soft knock on the door made her flinch. "For Jenifer?" Mrs. Han's voice, muffled but recognizable. Jenifer scrubbed at her face, shoving the folder under the bed with her foot. "Yes?" But the door opened a crack. Mrs. Han peered in, frown easing when she saw Jenifer alone. "Mr. Kang asked for fresh linens in the study," she said. "He'll be working late. Can you handle it?" "Bar now?" Jenifer's throat was raw. "Bar yes, you are on evening duty." Mrs. Han's gaze sharpened. "Is something wrong?" But Jenifer forced a smile that felt like it might crack. "Just tired, ma'am. I'll take care of it." But Mrs. Han hesitated, then nodded. "Don't linger in his office," she reminded her. "And do not touch the safe." "Bor, I know," Jenifer said softly. She waited until the older woman's footsteps faded before she stood. The study was empty when she entered. The city beyond the glass glowed against the night, a sea of lights that made her feel very small. The desk lamp was on, illuminating a stack of files, a glass of forgotten whiskey, a pen left uncapped. She changed the linens on the leather sofa where he sometimes slept when work bled into dawn. Her hands moved automatically, smoothing creases, tucking corners. "BR, don't touch the safe." Her gaze slid to the wall panel behind the desk. BR, she knew where it was. Everyone on staff did, even if they pretended otherwise. A faint outline in the wood, a subtle difference in the grain, a code only he and his most trusted people knew. Except someone else knew now too. Someone who had bragged about slipping people into this room, about opening locks that weren't meant to open. Someone who had weaponized her entire life. "Bur, you were always meant to be here." Bur, Jenifer's pulse roared in her ears. She didn't intend to go near it. She meant to finish the linens and leave. But when she turned, her elbow bumped the edge of the desk and sent a folder sliding to the floor. "Great," she muttered, bending to gather the scattered pages. For the first thing she saw was her own name, not on some old debt contract, on a printed email, neat and precise, BR subject, payment confirmation, Bell's account. Her hand froze. The text blurred as she scanned it. A Korean bank, an American creditor, a wire transfer so large it made her stomach lurch. The sender, a secure Kang Industries account. BR behind that, another confirmation. And another, a pattern stretching back months. Years. Every page she reached for seemed to have her life stamped on it. Hospital reference numbers she recognized, addresses that had been hers, dates lining up with the frantic calls from her mother, the moments when she thought the sky was falling, only for the crisis to mysteriously work out at the last second. For it hadn't been luck, it had been him. Her knees gave out. She sank into the chair behind the desk, the papers spreading in her lap like snow. He'd been paying her family's debts, not once. Not as some impulsive act of pity. Systematically, strategically, clearing the most dangerous loans, negotiating lower rates, buying out predators and folding them under his control. He'd reached into the mess of her life and quietly started putting out fires she hadn't even told him about. "Finding what you were looking for?" For the voice came from the doorway. For Jenifer spun, papers sliding to the floor. Beom-seok leaned against the frame, his tie hanging loose, his shirt unbuttoned at the throat. The tattoos at his neck had never looked darker. Her mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, I was changing the linens, and I knocked." He stepped inside, letting the door click shut behind him. For a man whose step staff had always heard coming a corridor away, he could move very quietly when he wanted to. "You weren't supposed to see those," he said. She clenched her shaking hands in her lap. "But you kept them on your desk," she managed. "In your study, where people clean. People are not supposed to touch my files," he reminded her. "Especially the ones with their own names on them. Paying my family's debts," she said, chest tight. The truth wouldn't stay down. All this time, why? A shadow crossed his face. "I told you," he said quietly. "You weren't hired by chance." The room seemed to tilt. "Did you know about everything?" she asked. "About what happened to my father, the loans, the way it all. I thought it was just bad luck, bad choices, but it wasn't luck," he said. "It was a knife someone put in your back." Her fingers dug into the arms of the chair. "Her," she whispered. "Soo-ah." His gaze sharpened. "What did she tell you?" Jenifer hadn't meant to say it. Fear clenched around her ribs, but there in his study, surrounded by proof that he'd been quietly protecting her, the words ripped free. "She found my file," she said. "The one I kept in my room. She said her family arranged some of the loans, changed terms, pushed things until my dad was drowning, so I'd be desperate enough to take this job. so she could keep me under her thumb. His expression went from shadow to lethal in an instant. She threatened to deport me, Jenifer continued, voice shaking, to hurt my family if I didn't leave. She wanted me to disappear and let you think it was my choice. A muscle jumped in his jaw. When? 2 days ago. Tears burned. I didn't know what to do. If I left, she'd stop. If I stayed, she said she'd make one phone call and everything would collapse. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides, bracing his hands on the arms of the chair, caging her in. She will never touch you, he said, each word carved. She will never come near your family again. I should have buried that entire snake's nest years ago. She's your fiancée, Jenifer whispered. She's a business contract, with delusions, he said, and that contract is about to be torn apart. Her gaze flicked to the papers strewn across the floor. You've been fixing what she broke, she said, without telling me. Would it have changed anything, he asked. If you'd known. Yes, she said, voice cracking. It would have changed everything. You've been carrying a burden that isn't yours. He straightened, raking a hand through his hair. It became mine the moment I knew your name, he said. The moment I realized what her family had done to you. You knew? The room spun. All this time you knew she was behind it? I suspected. His jaw tightened. I had proof by the time you arrived. That's why I made sure you came here instead of wherever they planned to throw you. A laugh burst out of her, wild and disbelieving. So I was right. I didn't just win a golden ticket to a billionaire's penthouse. You did, he said softly. You just didn't realize the factory was built over a minefield. She pressed her fingers to her temples. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to see me as your rescuer, he said. I wanted you to see me as a man who made his own mistakes. I wanted you to choose me for yourself, not because I showed up waving a checkbook. Her heart twisted. I would have chosen you anyway, she whispered, the truth too loud to contain. His breath hitched. He took a step back, putting distance between them as if the space might keep him from doing something they couldn't take back. It doesn't matter now, he said. What matters is what happens next. What does that mean? Tomorrow night is the final gala, he said. The engagement party Soo-ah's family insisted on. Every major family will be there. They think they're coming to watch me bend the knee. And you're going to, what, humiliate her? Jenifer asked, uneasy. Retaliate? I'm going to cut the leash, he said, publicly, permanently. And I'm going to make sure everyone in that room knows that if they touch what's mine, there will be nothing left of them. Her pulse skipped. You can't go to war with them for me, Beom-seok. For you, he said quietly, I'd burn the entire city. The hotel ballroom was a glittering cage. Jenifer stood near the back wall, holding a silver tray balanced on one hand, the weight familiar and alien all at once. Her maid's uniform was freshly pressed, her bun tight, her expression carefully blank. She might as well have been wearing armor. Keep your head down, Mrs. Han had said when she handed Jenifer the tray. Serve quickly, leave emotions in the staff room. Be your easy advice when your future wasn't being detonated in front of half of Seoul. Gold and crystal dripped from the ceiling, chandeliers casting a warm glow over tables arranged like a chessboard. Men in suits that whispered money. Women in gowns that floated like smoke. On one side of the room, a raised dais with 2 high-backed chairs. Thrones waiting for a king and his chosen queen. Except the woman in gold wasn't his queen. Not if he kept his promise. Soo-ah sparkled at the center of a crowd near the dais, her dress a cascade of sequins that caught every flash of light. She laughed too loudly, touched arms too often, performed joy for an audience she fully expected to rule. Her eyes kept flicking to the private entrance, while waiting. Jenifer moved among the guests, offering champagne, collecting empty glasses, the tray beginning to ache into her wrist. Snatches of conversation drifted around her. About time he settled down. The choice must be pleased. This cements everything. Unless he pulls one of his stunts. The Kang boy loves theatrics. He won't, another voice said confidently. Not with that much money on the table. Would, Jenifer thought, because somewhere between blood and ink and whispered confessions, he had decided that she was worth more than any check. The private doors opened. Conversation dimmed to a murmur, then a hush. Beom-seok entered alone. No parents, no entourage, just him in a black suit cut to his shoulders like it had been drawn there, his hair slicked back, his expression unreadable. The tattoos on his hands peeked from beneath his cuffs, the only hint of the violence simmering under the polished surface. Every head turned. Every gaze tracked him as he walked toward the center of the room. He didn't look at the dais. He didn't look at Soo-ah. He looked at Jenifer. The contact lasted less than a second, a flick of dark eyes, a tiny tilt of his chin, but it was enough to make her heartbeat stutter. Bar, he knows I'm here. Soo-ah detached herself from the crowd, gliding toward him, her smile bright enough to blind. Bar Beom-seok, she cooed. You're late. Bar, I'm here, he said. That's what matters. Bar, and looking devastating as always, she said, looping her arm through his. Shall we greet our guests? Bar, our guests, he repeated, as if testing the phrase. Jenifer shifted, trying to fade further into the wall. She shouldn't be close enough to hear this, but the movements of the staff had created a convenient eddy in the flow of bodies, leaving her within earshot. Try to look happy, Soo-ah murmured, still smiling for the crowd. We want them to believe you're delighted to marry me. Bar, his jaw flexed. Lying has never been my weakness, he said. Good, she said. You'll need that skill tonight. Bar, the master of ceremonies, stepped up to the microphone, voice booming through the speakers, welcome and flattery filling the room. Jenifer barely heard him. Her entire awareness was narrowed to Beom-seok's profile as he stood beside Soo-ah, his expression carved from stone. To celebrate the union of two great families, the MC intoned, we invite Kang Beom-seok and Choi Soo-ah to join us on the dais and share a few words. BR applause rippled through the crowd. They mounted the steps together, a picture-perfect couple. Somewhere, cameras flashed, phones lifted. Deals were already being calculated in the spaces between claps. Bar Jenifer's palms were damp against the tray. Say something charming, Soo-ah murmured behind her smile. What would you like me to say, he asked. That you're honored, she replied. That you're happy, that you look forward to building a future with me. Bar, that would be a lie, he said. Bar, her grip tightened on his arm. Then lie, she hissed. For once in your life, put the greater good above your stubborn pride. Bar took the microphone. For a second he said nothing. The silence stretched, edged with electricity. Thank you for coming, he said finally, voice measured. Your presence honors both our families. Soo-ah's shoulders relaxed a fraction. This she could work with, politeness, diplomacy. In our world, he continued, alliances are everything. We build them with contracts, with marriages, with blood. Nods around the room. The Chois have been valuable allies, he said. They have stood beside my family in moments of transition. For that, they have my gratitude. Soo-ah's smile widened. However, he said, the word landed like a drop blade. However, he repeated, some alliances are built on rot, on lies, on the suffering of those who never chose to be pieces on our board. A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Jenifer's fingers dug into the tray's edge. In recent years, he said, certain members of the Choi family have used desperate families as leverage, manipulated debts, orchestrated ruin, all to place their chosen puppets in positions of control. Soo-ah's smile froze. Tonight, he continued, I sever that rot. He handed the microphone to the MC without ceremony, ignoring the man's startled look, and stepped down from the dais. Beom-seok, Soo-ah hissed, following. What do you think you're doing? Correcting a mistake, he said. He moved through the crowd with purpose, people parting before him. Jenifer's breath came shallow and quick. She tried to collapse into the wallpaper. It didn't work. He stopped in front of her. Up close, his eyes were blazing. Not wild, never that, but lined with something fierce and terrifyingly clear. Put the tray down, he said softly. Her voice deserted her. She set it on the nearest table, hands trembling. Come with me, he said. I shouldn't, she whispered. Everyone's watching. That's the point. He took her hand. Heat shot up her arm where his skin met hers, the tattoos on his knuckles rough against her fingers. The room gasped as one entity. Let go of her, Soo-ah snapped, heels clicking furiously as she caught up. You're embarrassing yourself. He turned, shielding Jenifer subtly from the worst of the stares. You wanted a spectacle, he said to Soo-ah. An engagement the city would never forget. Congratulations, you're getting it. You wouldn't dare, she said, color draining from her face. I dare many things, he replied. This is the smallest of them. He led Jenifer to the center of the ballroom. The string quartet had stopped again. The hum of murmurs filled the vacuum. Mafia heads exchanged low, urgent whispers. Wives leaned in, eyes bright with horrified delight. Jenifer felt like she was walking into an execution. This is wrong, she murmured. You don't have to do it like this. You'll start a war. A war started the day they touched your family, he said. Tonight, I merely changed the battlefield. He stopped, turned to face her. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Jenifer, he said, voice lower now, meant for her but carrying anyway. Look at me. She did. For once there was no mask, no cold CEO, no ruthless kingpin, Just a man whose world was built on steel and rage and who had somehow decided she was worth more than both. "This is insane," she whispered. "Your ex is right there. Your entire world is watching." "Be or let them watch," he said. Then Kang Beom-seok, the Ice King of Seoul, dropped to one knee in front of his Maid. The room detonated. Br gasps, shouts. Someone cursed. Glass shattered in sympathetic panic. Cameras flashed like lightning. Behind him, Soo-ah's scream cut through the chaos. "For you bastard!" For he ignored her. "Jenifer Bells," he said, pulling a black velvet box from his jacket. His hand shook just once. He steadied it. "When you walked into my kitchen half asleep and told me not to die on your watch, you did something no one else has managed in years." "Beer what?" she choked. "You made me want to live," he said simply. "Not just survive, not just win. Live." Her tears burned hot and sudden. "You brought coffee to a man covered in blood and didn't flinch," he continued. "You looked at my tattoos and saw art instead of a warning label. You stood in a room full of people who would happily crush you, and you still chose to stand by me." "Beer, I didn't," her voice broke. "I'm not that strong." "Beer, you are," he said. "Stronger than me some days. Strong enough to tell me the truth when everyone else lies. Strong enough to be afraid and stay anyway." Burr's thumb flicked open the box. The diamond inside was obscene, huge, brilliant, throwing sparks of light across the ceiling. Bar gasps rippled again. "This ring," he said, "is not a leash. It is not a contract. It is a promise that I will spend the rest of my life making sure no one ever uses you as a pawn again." "Bur Beom-seok," she whispered, shaking. "They'll destroy you for this. I'm nobody." "Bur, you're everything," he said. Far behind him, Soo-ah pushed through the crowd, eyes wild. "You are out of your mind," she spat. "Get off the floor. This is a joke. Tell them it's a joke." Bar, he didn't even turn. "Say yes," he told Jenifer, "and I will burn every debt with your name on it in front of the men who thought they owned you. Say no, and I'll still protect you. I'll still tear down anyone who touches you. But I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I threw away the only real thing I've ever had." For Jenifer's chest ached. Around them, the families watched like a pack of wolves sniffing for weakness. Some looked outraged, some curious, some calculating how to pivot their allegiance if the wind changed. "This is wrong," she said again, tears spilling over. "I was supposed to be invisible." Burr, he smiled, small and devastating. "Too late." Burr, her gaze dropped to the ring, then lifted to his face. She thought of her father's ruined hands, her mother's tired eyes, of Soo-ah's threats and whispered cruelty, of blood on Beom-seok's ribs, ink under her fingers, the way his voice softened only when he said her name. Bar, fear roared. So did something else. Bar, yes, she breathed. Bar, the word was soft, but it hit the room like thunder. Pandemonium erupted. Soo-ah lunged forward. "You stupid, ungrateful!" Burr, her father, grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. His face was a mask of fury and calculation. Enough," he hissed. Beom-seok rose smoothly, sliding the ring onto Jenifer's shaking finger. His hand closed over hers in a grip that felt like a vow. "Then let the war begin," he murmured. Bar, he didn't have to wait long. Bar, the first shot shattered a chandelier. Crystals rained down, sparkling like falling stars before smashing into glittering dust on the marble. Screams tore through the musicless air. Men dove for cover. Women in gowns scrambled, heels slipping. "Down!" Beom-seok barked, pulling Jenifer with him behind a flipped table. For another shot. This one punched into the pillar inches from where her head had been a second ago. Beer, her ears rang. The smell of gunpowder burned her throat. "But is this them?" she gasped. "Soo-ah's family. Or who else?" he said grimly, eyes scanning the chaos. "They wanted leverage. I gave them a public insult instead." Br staff ducked behind bars and carts. Bodyguards who'd looked ornamental a moment before pulled guns from nowhere, returning fire toward the balcony where muzzle flashes flickered. Beom-seok yanked off his jacket, wrapping it around Jenifer's shoulders like a shield, shoving her lower. "Stay down," he ordered. "Do not move unless I tell you to." "Bur, you can't go out there," she said, gripping his arm. "They're aiming for you. They're aiming for both of us now," he said. "Congratulations. You're officially part of the problem." "Bar, not helping," she snapped, then flinched as a bullet ricocheted off the overturned table. His eyes met hers. "Bar, I need you to trust me," he said. "One more time." I said yes," she shot back. "You think I'd do that if I didn't?" Or something fierce flashed in his gaze. He reached up, touched her cheek once, a quick grounding brush of inked knuckles against skin. "On my signal," he said, "we moved to the side exit. There's a service corridor that leads to the kitchens and then to the parking garage. My men will clear a path." What about everyone else?" she demanded. "The staff, Mrs. You think I'd lead them?" he asked, insulted even now. But he whistled, sharp, piercing. Somewhere in the chaos, his men responded, their movements suddenly coordinated. A wave of bodies shifted, guests ducking as a line of security formed, guns out, eyes scanning. "For now," he said. He grabbed her hand and ran. They darted between tables, shattered glass biting at their ankles. Someone screamed nearby, someone else sobbed. Blood slicked the floor. She tried not to look. Halfway to the side door, a figure stepped into their path. It wasn't a gunman, it was Soo-ah. Her hair was disheveled, her gown torn at the hem, but her eyes were clear and bright, fixed on them with laser focus. "You won't make it out," she said over the discordant symphony of gunfire and screams. "You think they'll let you walk away after this? You've humiliated my family, you've humiliated me." "Be your move," Beom-seok said. "Or what?" she taunted. "You won't shoot me. You still need me alive to keep this from turning into a full-scale massacre." "Beer, I need you out of my way," he said. "Alive or not." Jenifer tightened her grip on his hand. "Don't," she whispered. "She's not worth it." Soo-ah laughed, wild and brittle. "Listen to your little maid," she sneered. "So soft, so moral. Do you really think you can survive in our world with that kind of weakness?" "Girl." Jenifer straightened, fear crystallizing into something sharp. "I survived your sabotage," she said. "I survived your threats. I survived you turning my father's life into a weapon. If that's weakness, I'll take it." Soo-ah's smile vanished. "You don't belong in this world," she hissed. "You never will." "Watch me," Jenifer said. Another shot cracked, closer this time. Plaster rained down from the ceiling. Beom-seok stepped forward, placing himself fully between the two women. "This ends tonight," he told Soo-ah. "Call your men off." "If you die here," she said, "the fallout hits everyone, including me, including my father. I'd rather drag this out and watch you suffer properly." "But generous," he said dryly. "Don't mistake this for mercy," she snapped. "You've just given every vulture in this room a reason to choose a side. We'll see who stays in your nest when the dust settles." He didn't thank her. He didn't need to. He pulled Jenifer through the gap. The service corridor was dim and narrow, lit by flickering fluorescent strips. The walls shook with the echo of the ballroom chaos. Staff pressed themselves against carts, eyes wide as the two of them sprinted past. "Parking garage," he told his men when they met them at the end of the hall. "Get her out." "What about you?" Jenifer demanded. "I have to go back," he said. "Secure my people. Make sure this doesn't turn into a slaughter." "You are not leaving me to be chauffeured away while you play hero," she said, planting her feet. "Jenifer, no." Her voice shook but held. "You said us, remember? That's dangerous language. You don't get to throw it around and then shove me into a car like I'm baggage." One of his men coughed pointedly. "Boss, we really need to move this argument somewhere with fewer bullets in the walls." She knew he was right. They both did. "Fine," Beom-seok said. He grabbed her hand again, squeezing. "Stay at my side. Do exactly what I say. No improvising." "When have I ever improvised?" she muttered. His look said, "Every second since you walked into my life." They reversed direction, following a different corridor that looped back toward the ballroom from behind. The sound of gunfire had diminished slightly, replaced by shouts and the wail of distant sirens, muted by expensive soundproofing but still audible. "Police?" Jenifer gasped. "Bought and paid for," one of his men grunted. "They'll show up late, write pretty reports, and arrest no one important. Story of this city," another added. They slipped back into the chaos through a service door near the bar. The scene had shifted. Bodies lay on the floor, some groaning, some terrifyingly still. Blood streaked the marble in brutal strokes. The remaining gunmen were pinned near the balcony by a line of Beom-seok's men and a handful of unexpected allies, a rival family's patriarch and his son, both firing with grim efficiency. "Kang," the patriarch roared without looking back, "you really know how to host a party." "I aim to entertain," Beom-seok replied. "Choi's dogs bit off more than they could chew," the older man said. "Thought they'd take you out tonight. Forgetting that when you fall, the rest of us lose our favorite shield." Touched," Beom-seok said dryly. Another shot. A gunman screamed, dropping his weapon. Jenifer ducked instinctively, heart pounding. "Your girl has nerves," the patriarch remarked when he noticed her. "Most would be curled under a table sobbing by now." "She's not most," Beom-seok said. A lull fell, the last of the gunfire fizzling out as the attackers realized they were outnumbered and outgunned. Those still on their feet dropped their weapons, hands raised. "Take them," Beom-seok ordered. "Alive. I want them to deliver messages." His men moved, efficient and ruthless. Sirens grew louder beyond the walls. The late police arrival, time to let the important work finish first. Jenifer looked around at the wreckage. Broken glass, spilled champagne, blood, the remains of an evening that had been meant to cement alliances and instead had detonated them. This is because of me, she whispered. This is because men like the Chuas don't know how to lose with grace, the patriarch said. You just gave them an excuse to show their true colors. She turned to him, frowning. Why are you helping us? Because I am not stupid, he said. You think I haven't noticed how the Chuas have been tightening their grip, bleeding smaller families, buying judges, turning desperation into their personal playground? He spat. They forget that we built this city long before they started playing at royalty. He glanced at Jenifer's ring, then at her face. And because the last time I saw a man look at a woman the way he looks at you, he added, jerking his head toward Beom-seok, he built an empire that still stands. I back winners. Jenifer's cheeks heated. We're not out of this yet, she said. No, the patriarch agreed, but you have something they don't. What? Symmetry, he said. They used a foreign girl's misery as leverage. You turn that into strength, into loyalty? The city will remember. The police finally flowed into the room, uniforms awash of blue among the tuxedos. Questions flew, statements were promised, stories were already being crafted and spun. Through it all, Beom-seok never let go of Jenifer's hand. Hours later, when the last body had been moved and the last statement taken, when the ballroom was a hollow echo of broken glass and cleaning crews, they stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool against her bruised skin. You should sleep, he said quietly. You've had enough insanity for one lifetime. You're one to talk, she said, leaning on the railing. You proposed to your housekeeper and started a Mafia war in the same hour. It was very efficient, he said. She huffed a laugh, then sobered. They won't stop, she said. Soo-ah, her family, they'll regroup. Try again. Yes, he said, which is why we don't wait for them. She turned. What do you mean? I mean we move first, he said. We take the story they wanted to use to break us and use it to build something they can't touch. You make it sound easy, she muttered. It won't be, he said. But we're not alone. As if summoned, the patriarch from earlier stepped onto the balcony, his son in tow. Kang, he said. Girl. Chairman Lee, Beom-seok said. Thank you for your enthusiastic participation tonight. I didn't do it for free, Lee said. I don't like the Shuis. They're parasites, but I don't jump into someone else's fight without a reason. You want a formal alliance, Beom-seok said. I assumed as much. I want stability, Lee corrected. My sons, my grandchildren, they need a city that doesn't devour them because one family plays God with everyone else's debts. He looked at Jenifer again, eyes sharp. You're American, he said. Yes, sir, she replied. Good, he said. You think differently. We need that. She blinked. Don't understand. Contracts, he said. Media, public opinion. These used to mean nothing in our world. Now they move markets faster than a gun. The Chuas use fear. We use visibility. She frowned. Visibility? You think tonight stays a secret? He asked. Too many phones. Too many mouths. By tomorrow, everyone will know the Ice King threw away a perfect alliance for a maid from another country. Smiled, slow and dangerous. So we give them a narrative that makes sense to them, he said. One where you are not a weakness but a symbol, of change, of modern alliances, of a man who can choose love and still keep his throne. That sounds like spin, she said. It's power, he replied. Different kind of weapon. Beom-seok's gaze warmed. You're suggesting we take this public, he said. Official, press. Statements. Yes, Lee said. Before the choice can twist it. We present a united front, Kang and Lee, old blood and new methods. He nodded at Jenifer. And we put her exactly where she belongs. Jenifer swallowed. Where is that? At his side, Lee said simply. Not as a maid, but as a queen with her own leverage. Your story is your weapon, girl. Use it before someone else does. Idea terrified her, It also felt right. If you stand with us, Beom-seok told Lee, the Chuas will see it as a declaration. They should, Lee said. They'll hit back. We'll hit harder. Eventually they'll learn. He extended his hand. Beom-seok took it, inked fingers strong around the older man's. An alliance, sealed not in blood, but in shared strategy and an understanding that the world was changing, whether the old guard liked it or not. Later, when the sun began to bleed over the horizon, painting Seoul in shades of gold and bruised purple, Jenifer stood in the penthouse kitchen with a mug of coffee between her hands. The uniform was gone. In its place, one of his shirts, too big, soft from wear, smelling faintly of cedar and something purely him. You know, she said as he stepped in, tie undone, eyes tired but alive. For a man who claims to hate theatrics, you really know how to stage a scene. He smiled, leaning against the counter. It got your attention, he said. You had that already, she replied. Bor good, he murmured. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the world outside waking up to news it didn't yet know would change everything. What happens now, she asked. Now, he said, we rewrite the rules. With Lee's backing and a few other families who prefer not to be Choi's lapdogs, we build a coalition that doesn't depend on terrorizing desperate people with debts. BR and me? She asked, voice smaller. Where do I fit in that? Bar, in the spaces they underestimate, he said. You know what it's like to be on the other side of those contracts. You see angles I don't. You think past the end of a gun. Beer, I'm not a strategist, she protested. You're the woman who stared down Choi's Soo-ah with nothing but your voice and refused to let me throw my life away for revenge, he said. That's strategy. He pushed off the counter and came closer, taking her free hand. Bar, besides, he added, we need a story, and you're very good at telling those. Bar, she huffed a laugh. I clean floors. You survived a foreign country, a mob heiress, and my temper, he said. You're more qualified than half the men in suits who pretend to run this city. He lifted her hand, kissed her knuckles gently. Jenifer Bells, he said, voice softening, you're not a maid anymore. The words settled over her like a blessing. You say that, she replied, but who's going to keep this place from turning into a bachelor cave now? Bar, we'll hire more staff, he said, on fair contracts with real protections. We'll make your family's story the last time someone like the Choi's gets to play God with people's lives. Her throat tightened. You really think we can pull that off? Bar, we, he repeated. Yes. Outside, her phone buzzed on the counter, a message from her mother, Bar Jenny. The strangest thing happened. The bank called. They said the debt is gone, completely wiped. They said an anonymous party bought it and forgave it. Did you do something? Baby, are you okay? Tears blurred her vision. She handed him the phone. Bar, should I be jealous? He asked lightly. Another man sweeping in to save the day? Anonymous party, she said. Very mysterious. Very broody. He chuckled, then sobered as he read. Tell her the truth, he said. Tell her you're safe, that she's safe, that her future daughter-in-law is terrifying enough to keep her son in line. Her eyes widened. Daughter-in-law? He shrugged. I plan ahead. Here, you proposed 2 hours ago. BR and I do it again, he said. Every day if you need reminding. B, she didn't. Not anymore. BR, she typed with shaking fingers. B, I'm okay, Mom. I got a promotion. Long story. I'll call soon. Things are changing here, for the better, I promise. She hit send, then set the phone down and turned back to him. You know, she said, there's still one thing we haven't done. B, what's that, he asked. Tell the rest of the world our version of this story, she said, before they write their own. B, he smiled slowly. Already arranging it, he admitted. Press conference, carefully leaked footage, some well-placed whispers about how the Choi's attacked guests at what was supposed to be a celebration. And the part where you proposed to your maid, she asked. That, he said, we frame as what it is. Bear, what's that? Bear, the moment the old rules cracked, he replied, and a new queen stepped in. Bear heat flushed her cheeks. I'm not a queen, she said. Bar, not yet, he said. But you will be. She looked at the city beyond the glass, at a skyline built on secrets and steel. Somewhere out there, the Choi's were regrouping. Somewhere, men were calculating new risks. Somewhere, women who'd never seen themselves as anything but pawns were hearing rumors that one of their own had been chosen, and had chosen herself in return. Bar, fear and excitement twisted together in her chest. Okay, she said quietly, let's do it. Let's rewrite the rules. His fingers tightened around hers. Bar, together, he said. Together, she echoed. Bar, she leaned into him, the weight of the ring on her fingers strangely steadying. The world outside was still dangerous. War still simmered, but for the first time since she'd stepped into his marble world, she wasn't just trying to survive it, but she was ready to shape it. And as dawn broke over Seoul, painting the city in light that didn't care who owned what, Jenifer Bells, no longer a maid, not yet a queen, but something new and dangerous in between, let herself believe that love could be more than a liability. It could be the match that burned down an empire and lit the way to something better. Subscribe and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Your support means everything to this channel.